Two immigrations to Ethiopia, not just one. If you take your information about Islam from the message, you only know about one hijrah. Right? And if you take your information about Islam from the cartoon they did about the Prophet ﷺ, you won't know there's any hijrah to Ethiopia. They leave it out. What kind of gratitude is that? But la nishkuri nas, la nishkuri nah. Whoever doesn't, the thank people hasn't thanked Allah. This is the first polity, the first empire, the first government to welcome the Prophet ﷺ and his followers, to give them refuge. And we write them out of history. And us, their children, we're not making movies or cartoons to correct the history. So Imam Suyuti writes this book where he mentions dozens, scores of African Sahaba who were present with the Prophet ﷺ. Bilal, Mahja or Mihja, who was the Mihja or Mahja. Anyone heard of him before? Mahja. You need to know about Mahja. Mahja was the client of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab. He was his client, meaning he attached himself to the family of Umar. And this was done for different reasons. Sometimes it was a slave who was freed, or sometimes it was someone who came to the Arabian Peninsula who didn't have any protection. They didn't have any family, and you had to have a set. You had to have, a group, right? Or you end up, right? You had to have someone to protect you. So Mahja was the Mawla of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, and he was the Crispus Attucks of the Battle of Badr. Anyone know who Crispus Attucks was? He fought in the American Revolutionary War. But what was it about him? The first martyr of the Revolutionary War. Mahja was the first of the martyrs of Badr. First. And that's significant. Just like the first martyr in Islam was Sumayya bint Khayyat. Right? If you watch the message, you saw this woman being stabbed with a spear, right? Sumayya. She was Abyssinian. In the movie, they don't cast her as Abyssinian. Right? So this is very significant, especially for my sisters, that the first person whose life was taken for this deen was a black woman. It's important. You have to know this. You have to know the standard, the sacrifice that was made by your grandmothers. Right? There was people like Baraka, Ayman, right? Who, like Halima as-Sa'diyah, radiallahu anha, the Prophet ﷺ used to say about her, Ummi ba'da ummi, my mother after my mother. Baraka is the only companion, there's no other companion who has this honor. She was the only companion who was with the Prophet ﷺ from the time he was born to the time he passed. Baraka Ayman. And she was amongst the people who he gave glad tidings of paradise. And he asked, who wants to marry one of the women of paradise? People didn't want to marry her. She's black, she's old. Right? So who stepped up? Zayd ibn al-Harith, who was another one of the Sahaba who were black. He stepped up, and then they had Usama. And of course, Zayd was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ. See, look at the Prophet, even before he announced his prophethood, he had a very beautiful affinity for the Abyssinians and the blacks that were around him. He adopted Zayd as his son before Allah forbade adoption and ascription to fathers other than your biological father. Right? They used to call it Zayd ibn Muhammad. Right? And they had Usama. Zayd was known as Habib Hib Rasulillah, the beloved of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his son Usama was known as Hib Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the beloved, the son of the beloved of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how so Baraka is another one of them. there's Mahja, there's Miqdad al-Aswad, right? He was one of the earlier, he and Bilal and Abu Bakr and Khadija and Ali, and Khubab, my time's up. And Khubab, they were amongst the first. Like when no one else was following the Prophet, they were there in Mecca. And Miqdad. And there was Fidda. Anyone heard of Fidda? Fidda she was a princess from Habasha who was captured and sold into slavery in Arabia. And Rasulullah ﷺ bought her and freed her. And we were talking about earlier one of the great scholars of Mauritania, Sheikh Mohammed Zain, who both Sheikh Rami and myself had the honor to meet in Mauritania, and he's renowned for buying slaves, not to keep them in slavery, but to free them. This is what Imam Zayd used to do. Imam Zayd, that the Zaydi school is named after, he used to do this. Zayd ibn Ali. He would buy slaves, because the government banned him from teaching. He would buy black slaves, keep them in his house, and teach them for a year. Until they became ulama, then he would free them and send them out. It's amazing history. So Fidda was freed by the Prophet ﷺ, and then she became a servant in the house of Fatima radiallahu anha, and she and Fatima would take turns doing chores. One day Fatima would do the chores, right? Then the next day Fatima would take a rest, and Fidda would do the chores, right? And that's how they did. And then Fidda, after Fatima passed, she served Imam Hassan, and then Imam Hussein, even though her brother came to her and said, look, come back to, you're a princess, come back to the kingdom. Right? She refused. She chose to stay in the house of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and she was present at Karbala when Imam Hussein and his sons were slaughtered, except for Imam Zain al-Abidin, and she was taken in chains with her hijab, her khimar ripped off her head, with Zainab, and the other women from the house of Imam Hussein to the court of Yazid in Damascus. So this history, you have to know these people. These are all great Sahaba, right? And so I just want to focus on this as I wrap up. Is this a real 10 minutes, or is this like Imam Siraj Wahaj 10 minutes? Because if it is, that means I have 30 minutes. Inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ, these two hijras to Habasha, he sent a letter to Al-Najashi, the Negus, who's known as Ashama, according to the most popular position of his name. And this letter was very beautiful. Please read this letter. I don't have time. I wanted to read it for you, but we don't have time. But it's a very beautiful letter that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ sent to the Emperor of Ethiopia, who eventually became a Muslim, and his son became Muslim and even took the name Muhammad. And it's a letter unlike the other letters that the Prophet ﷺ sent to Kisra and Heraclius. Very different tone. He begins praising Allah, and he mentions the different names of Allah: Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir, Al-Quddus, Al-Salam. And he says, Ahmadullah ilayk, I praise Allah to you. This is from the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says to the great Negus, Al-Najashi Al-Azim. And then he says, verily I bear witness that Jesus is the Spirit of Allah and a word from Him, cast into the Blessed Virgin Mary, and that His likeness is as the likeness of Adam alayhi salam. And I invite you and your soldiers, I invite you, ad'ukum wa junudik ila al-muwala fi ta'atillah. I invite you to al-muwala, in obedience to Allah Ta'ala. Al-muwala is it's an amazing word, because it encompasses wilayah with Allah, friendship with Allah. It encompasses governance, political governance, wilaya, an obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says at the end, وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى مَنِ اتَّبَى الْهُدَى, and peace be upon those who follow the guidance. It's a very beautiful letter. You know, it's not like some of the other letters the Prophet ﷺ sent to the different kings and the chiefs of Arabia. Some of them went like this. This is from Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, min Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to whoever the name of the person, the great chief, the great emperor, Aslim Taslim. Right? Right? Embrace Islam and you'll find salvation. Simple, right? No elaboration. But the letter to the Negus was long, it was beautiful, and he bore witness to Isa alayhi salam and to Maryam alayhi salam, to Mary. And it's in that letter, my teacher Muhammad Sharif always taught us that letter was not just to a Najashi, but that letter is to every African person. Right? Just like the letter he sent to the Persian, to Caesar and Kisra, he said when they tore up the letter, they said the sin of his people is upon him. So that invitation wasn't only to the king, but to everyone under their authority. It's the original message to the black man. Right. This is the original message to the black man. That letter from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that letter, that word al-muwala, was a promise from the Prophet ﷺ that if the Najashi accepted, that this is what his people, the people of Habasha, would find. And from that time on until now, you find Africans who were people of governance according to the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. You find Africans who reach the highest levels of wilaya, the highest levels of sainthood in Islam, according to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It all began with that letter, and the acceptance of An-Najashi. He was the only emperor who accepted, the only superpower during that time. There were three superpowers. There was Persia, there was Byzantine Rome, and Abyssinia. And don't be mistaken about Abyssinia. Imam al-Nawawi, in his book, Tahdhib al-Asma' wal-Lughat, the refinement of names and languages, he says Al-Habasha, Abyssinia. He says, this is Imam al-Nawawi, the one who compiled Riyadh al-Salihin and the 40 Hadith, Imam al-Nawawi, Mustan al-Arifin, Al-Minhaj, Sharh Sahih Muslim, all these great, amazing books. He said, Al-Habasha is the largest of all the lands on the earth. And it's the most populous. If he was only speaking about the Horn of Africa, there's no way that could be true. There's no way it could be true. So Habasha, it's like New York. So New York, when you say New York, you can be talking about the city, you can be talking about the state. When you say Sham, right? Sham, old Sham was Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria. What we know as Syria today, the Levant, right? Right. But if you go to Syria, you say Sham, right? The Damascans will tell you, Sham is right here, right? Sham is Damascus. Right? So you can have one word, right, that can address local, areas and then larger areas. So from then on, from An-Najashi, just one last thing before I go on, and I'm going to wrap up quickly, inshallah ta'ala. So An-Najashi accepted, of course, he gave them asylum, and to this day, my brothers and sisters, you have the graves of Sahaba that are in Ethiopia. You have graves of Sahaba in Somalia. Because back then, Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia was all one. It was just one. Like Sham was all one, right? Before people came and started drawing lines, right? They got us to believe that those lines were real. All right? It was all one. So to this day, I met a sister from Somalia a few months ago, she was a little, upset. She's like, man, these Arabs, they treat us like we don't know anything about Islam. They're very paternalistic. Right? She was complaining. Something happened to her, right? She said she doesn't know. She said they don't know anything. In Somalia, we have masjids. We have a place that has masjids with 2 qiblas. We have masjids in Somalia facing Jerusalem and facing Mecca. It's a deep history. Deep history. She said, how would they think we just came into Islam? We can't lead to this, And of course, that's not all Arabs, right? The intention here is not to, demonize or to bash, but there's certain ignorance and there's certain attitudes in the Muslim world. And my hope is that with this kind of knowledge coming out, that we can, those people who love truth, they can correct the misconceptions and misunderstandings. So from Habasha, we now see a continuous wave of African Islamic empires, like Darfur. Right, Darfur, came into the news a while back as a crisis area, but that used to be the name of a kingdom, a Muslim kingdom, like Funj, right? Like Kanem-Borno, which is a place known for Quran. To this day, in northern Nigeria and western Chad, the place known as Kanem-Borno, the people there memorize Quran the way other people memorize Fatiha. Like if you're not Hafiz of Quran in that area, there's like, what happened? Like what's wrong with you? Right? And they found out that one of the secrets for their ability to memorize Quran so quickly and with so much proficiency is that the Lake Chad has one of the densest areas in the world of blue-green algae. And if you know anything about blue-green algae, it's a brain food. It's a brain food. And the African way of memorizing Quran, those of you who say in Mauritania and Senegal, it's not only memorizing the Quran by heart. You write the Quran. All the way from North Africa, Morocco and Algeria, to West Africa, to Sudan and Ethiopia. They don't just memorize, and I hope this is something we can revive here in the United States. Right? There's a city in Senegal called Porokhan. Porokhan is the city where the mother of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba lived, Mariam Bousso, who was a descendant of Imam Hassan, the grandson of the Prophet. There's a school there for women only, and they just graduated last year, 20 young sisters, right? Hufaz of Quran. And you see the picture of these young sisters. They each have the Quran that they wrote from memory. You can't graduate without having your own Quran written. And really, you graduate with 3 Qurans that you write from memory. One, you give to your parents as a gift. One, you give to your teacher as a gift. And the other, that's your Quran that you keep. Right? That's the system of education in East and West Africa and in North Africa. That's what you have to know. You have to know what you're capable of. And they write the Quran with the right vowels, with the right letters, and you can't make a mistake. Right? You can't make a mistake. So we have empires like Mali, right, Songhai, right, and Mali, Songhai are very well known because of Mansa Musa, right? Mansa Musa, Askia Mohammed Toure. Right? These are great places. Timbuktu was in Songhai. It's a city that the scholars say no one except Allah has ever been worshipped in this city. Right? And what made Timbuktu unique is that the ulama, the fuqaha, ruled the city. The Askia, the king, did not rule the city. There was a separation between the executive branch and the judicial branch of government. Right? And Timbuktu was like Vatican City. Right? The people would seek asylum in Timbuktu because they knew the king could do nothing to them. Right? And Shaykh Ibrahim Mendes, radiallahu anhu, he spoke about this reality in his book Sa'adat al-Anam. Shaykh Ibrahim Mendes is a scholar everyone should know. Right? He's a prolific writer. He lived from 1900 to 1975. Right? Really interesting. He passed in the same year the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed. And his successor, and with Detroit, temple number 1, right? Right? It's a masjid now, temple number 1. Masjid Wali Muhammad. Wali Muhammad. So, Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed in 1975. Shaykh Ibn Mendes passed in 1975. The successor of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was Imam Wahid Muhammad. The successor of Shaykh Ibrahim Niaz was Shaykh Hassan Sise. It's the same name as your Imam. Right? Shaykh Hassan Sise passed in 2008. And Imam Wahid Muhammad passed in 2008. It's amazing. So Shaykh Ibrahim Niaz, he lived 75 years. He wrote 75 books, and he had 75 children. Prolific. Allahu Akbar. And he wrote in one of his books, Sa'adat al-Anam, he said that the people, the masses of people, should obey the emirs, the umara. They should obey the political rulers. And the political rulers should obey the scholars. Right. So this is a very, so you see this in Timbuktu, you see this in the rise of Shaykh Ibrahim Niaz. Very different than the way things operated in the Umayyad and the Abbasid and Andalusia. It's a different. Askia Muhammad, he would write letters to Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Maghili, right, asking him questions about the deen, right? So you have these different empires, meaning there's too many to name. There's Messina, there's Segu, there's Jolof, the Jolof Empire, there's the Fulta, and then there were great scholars like, I just want to mention a few as we wrap up. There was great scholars like Haj Salim Suare. Haj Salim Suare, please write his name down, look him up. There's a tradition called the Suarian tradition. That's an indigenous African minhaj. It's a methodology for Muslims living as minorities and majority non-Muslim Arabs. And he had 7 or 8 points, yes. Haj Salim, S-A-L-I-M, and then his last name was Suare, S-U-W-A-R-E. Haj Salim Suare. So just type in Salim, S-A-L-I-M, Suare, S-U-W-A-R-E, or also type in the Suarian tradition, S-U-W-A-R-I-A-N. And Haj Salim Suare lived, historians say, around the 13th century. Right? And many of the ulama in Africa trace their asanid, trace their chains of learning to him. He's like the madar. In hadith science, you have the madar, right? The person who all the chains flow. And he taught a number of things. Number one, he said that he was Malinke, that was his people. They were Malinke, Mandinka, Mandingos, Mandinka people, who are very noble people. They are also descendants of the Prophet ﷺ. Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah has been writing and speaking a lot about the Mandinka people. He said, non-Muslims are not Muslim because they're evil. He said they're not Muslim because they're ignorant. And they must be treated like flowers that have not yet bloomed. He taught that Muslims living, and I know this really goes against everything we've done for the past, 100 years or so here in the United States, but listen to the wisdom listen to the wisdom in his principles. Muslims living as minorities in non-Muslim lands should not actively proselytize and do da'wah to people of other religions. Allah will let the flower of Iman bloom in His time. No active proselytization, He taught His followers, and this is how Islam was in Africa for centuries. No active proselytization. He said the responsibility of Muslims is to become learned in their religion and to emulate the most exalted character, so that when those people, when their hearts are open to Islam, they come to you to learn. So now we have a lot of da'wah going on, right? We have a lot of, how to give shahada in 10 minutes, right? And people are using this, right? And they're very effective. People give shahadas, like, people become a Muslim, like, But a lot of these people end up, they say 70% of the people who embrace Islam in America end up leaving. Right? And then I know so many people who are interested in Islam, they don't know what to do. Because the Muslims, many of the Muslims they see around them, alhamdulillah, we still have many, many brothers and sisters who are great embodiments of the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah. But many of the Muslims they see around them, a lot of the things they see, some of our brothers and sisters overseas, they don't know what to do. So they'll have their Quran, they'll be at home, right, and they'll practice Islam as best they can on their own. He said that jihad is only defensive, right? This is 12th, 13th century. He's not a modernist Muslim. He's not practicing fiqh al-aqaliyat, like minority fiqh or anything like this. Right? Jihad should only be defensive, right? And then you have many other beautiful things. He said the most important thing for Muslims to do is build educational institutions. Right? And we were talking about this earlier with Shaykh Rami, who was mentioning a brother who studied in Mauritania from Mali, who they have Quran schools, where they teach Quran, they teach the different sciences of Islam to non-Muslims. Right? And this is something that was done in Africa for centuries. They would have schools for teaching Arabic, schools for teaching Quran, schools for teaching theology, for teaching jurisprudence, spirituality, and they were open to everybody. And the Africans who were Dogon, the Africans who were Mendes, they would send their children gladly because they wanted their children to be literate. And what would happen inevitably is those children become Muslim. And that was their way. That was Saddam Suarez's way of giving da'wah to the people. Right? Address a need. Address a need. Right? So, and then there's people like Sheikh Uthman ibn Fodio. Right? We should know him. There's a really good book about him called The African Caliphate by Ibrahim Suleiman. He was a prolific writer, as were his brother, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Fodio, his son, Sheikh Muhammad Bello ibn Uthman, and his daughters, Nana Asma'u and Maryam ibn Fodio. They're some of the few women scholars who were very prolific, who signed their names on their books. Right? We've had tens of thousands of Muslim women scholars, but a lot of them are lost to history. Right? Nana Asma'u, there's a number of books about her. The Caliph's Sister by Jean Boyd and Beverly Mack, One Woman's Jihad by same authors, and most recently I just learned about from Ustad Ismail, Educating Muslim Women. Just came out, right? About Nana Asma'u, who was a scholar. She was fluent in 5 languages. She wrote in 3 languages. She was a poet, right? Extraordinary poet. And then there's the book, The Collected Works of Nana Asma'u, that has all of her works in Arabic and English translated, right? She was a mother. She was a wife. She was an archivist as well as a sheikha. I have a chain in the Qadiriya school of spirituality that includes her in the silsila, in the chain of transmission. She had men who studied from her. And this is a tradition that's Islamic, that goes all the way back to Aisha. So Nana Asma is very important. Her father, Shaykh al-Fodio, established a caliphate in 1804 in what's now northern Nigeria. Right? And his life is incredible. He said at the age of 10, a state came over me where I was overwhelmed with intense love of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and I began weeping uncontrollably. And Shaykh al-Fodio had his first great spiritual opening at the age of 40, when he wrote his magnum opus, Ihya al-Sunnah, the revival of the Sunnah. He and his community made hijrah when he was at the age of 53. And he died at the age of 63. Uthman ibn Fodio. Right? It's people like, I'm coming, I'm getting there. Right? Hajj Umar Tal al-Foti, right? Who's a great Tijani Shaykh, right? Who was a mujahid, he was a warrior and a scholar. They say he not only memorized the Quran, but the Bukhari, Muslim, and the other 6 books of the Sunnah. Right? Yeah. Hajj Umar al-Foti. His book, Al-Rimah, the spear, right, is Rimah Hizb al-Rahman ala Nufur Hizb al-Shaytan. The spear of the party of the All-Merciful against the hordes of the parties of Shaitan is a classic that's taught all over Africa today. Hajj al-Foti, the Shaykh Ahmad Rubamba, who I mentioned, who's known for writing amazing poems about the Prophet ﷺ and Aqidah and Fiqh, and he's most famous for resisting the French colonial empire non-violently. He wanted to wage a jihad like his fathers before him did, and many of the scholars in Senegal did, and he said the Prophet ﷺ came to me in a vision and forbade me from taking up weapons against the French, and said, your jihad will be with knowledge and with piety. This is before Gandhi. You have to know this history. This is before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, Inni ujahidu bil-ulumi wa-tuqa. Indeed, I wage jihad with knowledge, sciences, divine sciences, and my piety. Abdan khadiman wal-muhaymin shahidu. A slave of Allah, a servant of the Prophet ﷺ. Al-Muhaymin, he's a witness to what I say. Ahmad Bamba is famous for praying on the water. Right? He prayed on the water, and this was recorded by the French. This is recorded by the French who held him in captivity. They wrote that it was time for Dhuhr prayer. He was being exiled to Gabon because the assassination attempts didn't work, and the slander campaigns didn't work. So they wanted to exile him to the jungles of Gabon to break him and to break the movement. And it was time for Dhuhr, and they wouldn't let him pray. They said, we're not going to let you pray, and we know you don't anger your Lord, but if you pray here, you're going to anger us. So what are you going to do? He said, I got up, and I jumped off the boat. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And he said, I landed on the water, I didn't sink, I prayed my prayer, and then I got back onto the boat. To let them know I'm not your captive here, because I'm telling you, and I mean, we don't have time, but I can show you this is one of his books. I mean, I can show you all this stuff. Right? It's amazing. The Belgian church canonized him as a saint. Right? Christians canonized him as because of all the miracles. Right? And I met one of his descendants in Senegal, Sheikh Nalo, and he said to us, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad was there, right? T.J. Winter, very prolific scholar and translator from England, from the UK, and he asked Sheikh Nalo, about this miracle. His faith, you pray on water, who does that? Right? Shaykh Mendes said, that wasn't the miracle. The miracle wasn't that he prayed on water. The miracle was that he prayed on time. It's important. So we don't lose sight of the real karama. Right? So alhamdulillah, the last scholar I want to mention, so the Shaykh Ibrahim Mendes, if you go to Dakar today, his descendants are there. You go to Kaulak, Medina Bay, Senegal, his descendants are there. The masjid he established is there. Sheikh Imam Tijani Sise is carrying on his work. You know, he comes to the United States like every year, every other year. He was just in Atlanta at the Eradicating Islamophobia conference, and there's a book by him that one of my good friends and my teachers, Sheikh Muhammad Abdullahi at Tijani, is translating, called ما يقولون العارفون بالله في معرفة الله. What the Gnostics through God say about gnosis of God, right? Direct knowledge of God. An amazing book about Marifa of Allah Ta'ala, which is being translated. So this is not, I want you to know, this is not a tradition that's like we're just talking about something that happened 200 years ago, 500 years ago. This is still being carried on today in Sudan, in places like Mabruka in Sudan, in Nigeria, in Sokoto, in Ilori, in Lagos, in Mali, in Senegal, in Ethiopia, in Harar, in Ethiopia, which we didn't talk about. You know, this is a city, 114 masjids in the city, 5 gates. Like everything in the city is based on the Quran. Amazing person. And the last person I want to talk about, and inshallah I'll stop, because we want to talk about West Africa. We're not going to talk about the Muslims who came to the United States, like Amir Abdul Rahman, and, you know, Yaro Mahmoud, and but just these last 3 people I want to talk about, and then we're done, inshallah, we're done. So, look, there's a person you need to know about, Cherno Bokar Salif Tal. He was from the family of Hajj Umar Tal that we mentioned. Cherno is spelled Tierno. Tierno. It means scholar in Fulani. His name was Salif Bokar Salif Tal. Bokar means is another way of saying Abu Bakr in their language. And then Salif is Saleh. And then Tal is the great Tal family. He was the Rumi of West Africa. He lived in Bandiagara in Mali. And he taught a way of looking at Islam and a way of looking at humanity that's really one of the most transcendent and universal ways I've ever seen. And it was based in the teachings of Shaykh Ahmed Tijani, and based in the teachings of his ancestors. Very tolerant. Very tolerant. And it's these kind of teachings that we need if we're going to coexist with each other in this world that's, you know, full of such diversity. He taught like Said Nursi from Turkey. He taught that those people who believe in one God, regardless of their religion, are one family, and that they should unite against atheism. They should unite against materialism. And this is what we're missing. We're so busy, you know, with polemics and fighting, and there are differences that are important. So there's a book about him called West African Sufi by Louis Brenner. There's another book about him called In the Spirit of Tolerance, The Life and Times of Cherno Bokar Salif Tal, Spirit of Tolerance, by his student Hampateba. So last, you know, I mentioned Imam Bookman, Imam Makandel already, and I just want to end with some books that I want to encourage you all to read, and 2 or 3 YouTube videos. So number 1, if you haven't read it already, read African Origins of Civilization by Sheikh Anta, who was actually a relative of Sheikh Ahmed Bamba. Right? A relative of Sheikh Ahmed Bamba. Sheikh Anta was a scientist, he was an anthropologist, he was a linguist from Senegal who did tremendous research into the history of the ancient Egyptians and the connection of Wolof to ancient, the ancient Egyptian language, proving that the ancient Egyptians were a black people. Recently I've started to do research into the connection between Arabic and ancient Egyptian, right? And the lineage of the Arabic language, you can trace its lineage from Arabic to Aramaic to Phoenician to ancient Egyptian, right? And you'll find words like the word for Arabic in Arabic noon. It means fish. It means ink pot, right? And the word noon in ancient Egyptian was water. Right? The letter meme, right? The glyph for the letter meme in ancient Egyptian, that sound, the m sound was water. And this is why math, there's so many, we don't have time for that. But there's a great connection between Wolof and Hausa, Arabic, Amharic, Hebrew. These are all Afro-Semitic languages, right? And it's a shame that we spend so much time fighting the Afrocentrics. And Wesley Muhammad, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, and I don't know if he's going to be at ISLA this year, but Imam Sultan, who's the grandson of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, will be at ISLA this year. Wesley Muhammad's been doing a lot of research. I don't agree with his theology. But he's been doing a lot of amazing research to show the connections between Islam and the way of math, which is the way of balance and harmony the ancient Egyptians practiced. So that book is very important. Black Athena, very important. It's a book, I forget the author, important book, Black Athena. In ancient Egypt, Light of the World by Gerald Massey. You can download it for free online as well. I already mentioned the African Caliphate by Ibrahim Suleiman, the Divine Flood. It's about the life of Sheikh Ibrahim Mendes. Incredible book. The author is a German. I forget his name. Say it? Say that louder.
Rudiger Seisman.
Rudiger Seisman. The Divine Flood. Right? The Divine Flood. The Social History of Timbuktu. Very important book. African Muslims in Antebellum America by Alan Austin. African Muslims in Antebellum America. One of my favorite books, Servants of Allah by Sylvain Joff. She's an amazing scholar. And she just came out with, she has like 2 other books.
She just did something with the link between blues music and African thing. Exactly.
Right. So Hafani was saying that she just did a book linking blues with the dhikrs that the Africans did. These melodies, and they just come out of anywhere. Jazz, it didn't just come out of nowhere.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Servants of Allah by Sylvain Joff. And Joff is spelled D-I-O-U-F. And then the last book I want to recommend is a book that just came out. My brother Ubada here, one of his professors, wrote the book. He's a professor of history at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. As you guys are hop skipping away, I don't know why, if you haven't, invite him to your masjid. Dr. Rudolph Bilal Ware. Okay. Dr. Rudolph Bilal Ware.
Did this book come out already?
Came out.
Just came out.
June, just came out.
He was telling me about it too.
It just came out. The Walking Quran, Islamic Education in West Africa, which is, to me, it's the most thorough historical and anthropological analysis of the traditional African way of learning. with the lower and embodiment of the Quran is ajib. So, he also has a YouTube video by the same name, Rudolph Ware, Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick, who wrote Deeper Roots. He has 2 videos you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. One's about Timbuktu, the history of Timbuktu. The other's about the history of Harar, Ethiopia. Harar was the Timbuktu of East Africa. And inshallah, that's enough. If you go with those, we can really. There's so many books, there's so many videos. We could be here hatta matla' al-fajr. And, so, but this history is important, and don't let this just be intellectual stimulation. We're in the masjid, right? Don't let it just be intellectual stimulation. This history, one of my teachers, one of my shield from Haiti, Shaykh Zo Abdullah, Allah preserve him, he said the reason you study your history is to discover which of your ancestors reached the highest stations of closeness to Allah Ta'ala. So you can make them your standard. You shouldn't strive to be lower than that. That's why you study your history, not to pump your chest and say, yeah, those are my, we had it going on back then. What about now? Right. The more we study each other's history, the more we study the history of Africans, the more we study the history of Europeans, the more we study the history of the Arabs, the more we study the history of the Chinese, of the Turks, of the Malay people, the more we find out our common ground. Really. The more I study, like for example, the more I study ancient Egypt, the more I realize, man, it's all the same. English came from the came from the Roman Latin alphabet, and that alphabet came from the Greek, and the Greek came from Phoenician, and that came from ancient Egyptian. So the further you go back and the deeper you go in, you realize our oneness as human beings. So alhamdulillah. We'll stop there. Are there any questions or any comments before we go?
With the book that you got, the PDF file, like with the sign in, the email, we get it forwarded to us, how you want it.
It's your director, so I get your email, send it to you. He can, share it, print it out, put it on the website, whatever you want to do. One more book. There's a partial translation of that book. It's in English called Illuminating the Darkness by Habib Akande. It's called Illuminating the Darkness by Habib, Habeeb, and his last name is Akande. He's Nigerian, Yoruba. And he named his book after another book on the history of the Abyssinians and the blacks by the great scholar Ibn al-Jawzi. Ibn al-Jawzi wrote Talbis Iblis, and the great Hanbali scholar. And he wrote a book called Tanwir al-Habash fi Fadl Sudan wal Habash. They were illuminating the darkness regarding the merit of the blacks and the Abyssinians. Right, so that book is really important. It has a lot of stories of the Sahaba.
I know it's 12:15. 10
Really?
seconds. I heard there were some Sahaba that went directly to either Timbuktu or West Africa. I didn't know their names, or they got sent out. Do you know any Sahaba that went? I mean, other than we know in Ethiopia, but
I don't know. But I'll tell you this, and I rarely share this with audiences in public. But I've spoken to more than one African scholar who they believe the Prophet ﷺ came to West Africa, right? And I don't know if it's part of the oral tradition, the oral transmission, but you hear this about the Prophet ﷺ coming from more than one location. I've never heard about the Sahaba. So Allahu A'lam. It's possible. It's very possible. And I've never heard about that. But I have heard from 2 or 3 people that their oral traditions relate that the Prophet actually came to what we know as like central, like Borno, around northern Nigeria. That's not something, don't quote me on that. Right? But it's just interesting that they have that in their own history, you know. Allah. Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else? Sisters? Okay, may Allah bless you. Thank you for staying with us. You know, past midnight. I know it's past your bedtime, but these children are amazing. If my children were here, they'd be jumping on the walls. But shukran jazeelan. Please forgive me if I said anything that was offensive or incorrect. And you know, keep me in your prayers, and inshallah ta'ala, may Allah bring us together for causes of good and benefit.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Jazakallah Shaykh Mendes. Before we depart, inshallah, we'll have one of our shuyukh here make a short dua for us. We have Fawaka, inshallah, will be working with the local community to try to bring more programming to the community. Inshallah, we can help benefit in that way. And we're also working on having a weekly Arabic class where you come once a week to study the language of the Quran. And inshallah, makes it easy for us. So I have some small brochures. You can go on our website, see kind of the curriculum that we use. And I have a sign-up sheet if you'd like to get information directly about the class. And you can just pass on to the sister's side, or to the brother's side. And don't worry, we won't spam you with all kinds of random stuff. So inshallah, we'll be able to benefit. Inshallah, we can help benefit from the things that are going on in this community as well. And so we'll close with dua.
Yeah, just if I could just say the Arabic that we teach with Fawaki, I'm a Fawaki teacher in Atlanta. These are the sciences that these great scholars studied. Nahu, Sarf, and Balagha. And you know, people like Shaykh Abdullah ibn Fodio wrote a poem called Al-Bahr al-Muhit, the all-encompassing ocean, that was 4,444 verses on verb conjugation. Right?
Just conjugation.
What?
Just conjugation.
Just verb tasrif. And when he wrote it, the ulama of his time, they declared him, and I didn't know there was this rank amongst ulama, but they declared him mujtahid mutlaq in Arabic. That he didn't have to rely on, Subuya, who's known as Sibawayh. He didn't have to rely on any other. He was a hujjah himself in the Arabic language. So it's important for us, especially us who are African Americans, to master not just any Arabic, not Egyptian Arabic, not modern standard, Quranic Arabic. And that's really what Fawaki is about, facilitating.
I know the crowd has dwindled down, but for those of you who are here, one just short reminder that I will ask that you take to others is that what we can take from this lecture, inshallah, is an inspiration to establish an educational center. These children here, mashallah, they've been able to sit through up till midnight. There's nothing holding them back from memorizing the Book of Allah. Nothing at all. Nothing. Nothing at all. The only thing holding them back would be our hope, our love of this dunya, getting them into the best schools, saying that it's too much, saying that, oh, they're not ready for it, saying this. It's just our own inhibitions that would prevent their potential from coming out. And one of the things that affects Islam in West Africa is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that خياركم في الجاهلية خياركم في الإسلام. At the beginning of it, الناس معادن كمعادن الذهب والفضة. This hadith saying that unlocking the potential of people, that all people are ores like gold and silver, and the best of them in Jahiliyyah are the best of them in Islam. If they gain understanding, this hadith is what has influenced all of the tasawwuf, all of the spiritual change that go throughout North and West Africa. That's another discussion, but the point is unlocking that human potential. These children have the potential to become huffaz, to become ulama. The only thing preventing it is us. So please, establish something for them. On a short note about the sunnah, many people don't realize why most of the time when you buy khuff, when you buy the leather socks, what color are they? Why? Just black, right? But the sunnah comes from Najashi. Remember, Shaykh Abdul Haq was speaking about the Najashi. He sent a pair of khuff to the Prophet ﷺ. They were made out of tan leather that were tan black. And so that sunnah, what you see everybody selling, comes from the Najashi. So another sunnah that comes is that when somebody gives you a gift, it's sunnah to partake in that gift right there, to show the people that I like your gift. If it's food, you eat it. If it's clothes, you put it on. When the Najashi sent the khuf to the Prophet ﷺ, when he got them on, he put them on right away. So it was showing us the sunnah. So next time you put on a khuf, remember the Najashi and remember his gift to the Prophet ﷺ and the sunnahs that we learned from that. And now that everybody wears a black khuf because of that original gift that was given to him, the Najashi also gave the dowry of one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. All of the dowries of the Prophet ﷺ's wives was 500 dirhams, 500 silver coins, except for one of the wives of the Najashi. He took over of Habiba's dowry, and it was 500 gold dinars. So if somebody's going to get married and they want to follow the sunnah, you can follow the Najashi implemented sunnah, which is 500 dinars, which is very expensive, or 500 dirhams, which is for them. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, give us the success to become followers of the sunnah. Allahumma habbib ilayna sunnah, Allahumma habbib ilayna al-Qur'an, Allahumma fahimna al-Qur'an. Allah give us understanding of the Qur'an and give us the tawfiq, the success to follow the Qur'an. وَحَبِّبْ إِلَيْنَا الْإِيمَانِ وَالطَّاعَةِ يَا Allah يا أرحم الراحمين, and make beloved to us obedience to you and faith. وَكَرِّهْ إِلَيْنَا الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانَ, and make hated to us disobedience and disbelief and sin, Ya Arham Ar-Rahimin. وَأَلِّفْ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِنَا يَا Allah. Oh Allah, bring our hearts together. وألف بين قلوبنا على فهم القرآن وعلى تلاوة القرآن وعلى تطبيق أحكام القرآن وعلى حب السنة وعلى حب نبينا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.